Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Radiance Effect Podcast, where the goal is to help you shine from the inside out. I'm your host, Brittany Janelle. Let's get into it. All right, y'all. For today's title and theme, we are talking about the power and the preparation. Now, y'all have heard me previously mention in episodes how important it is to set the tone and to prepare for your day, right? I discuss the things that I personally do to make sure that I'm fueling myself and filling my cup to prepare as the day-to-day demands of life hit, right? Some of those things, as a reminder, consist of starting my morning with prayer and gratitude and being intentional with the things that I'm praying about. I do affirmations pretty consistently. I enjoy reading. I like listening to podcasts or listening to audibles. Those things have been game changers for me and my overall check-ins when it comes to recentering myself. But what I want to talk about today is the preparation that can often go unnoticed. I love to start with like a little story time, and let me let y'all in on the life of Brit, okay? So I work in sales. I'm an account manager in the furniture industry. And just to further explain that, I remember when I got into this industry, I was like, okay, what is this like? I thought it was going to be something like furniture sales at Art Band or something. And for those who are in graphics, you probably remember or know what that is, right? But what I do is I provide furniture to places like hotels or schools, maybe medical clinics, commercial buildings. That's essentially what I do. And I've been in this industry now coming up on almost 2 years. So it's been a major shift and lots of learning. Honestly, even before I started with this company, the owner told me that the learning curve is about 18 to 24 months. So if that tells you anything, it tells you a little bit, right? And what makes it so complex is when it comes to all the things that could be specified with one piece of furniture. Quite insane when you really think about it. And before this, what I did is I worked in the staffing industry for about 5 years. So come to furniture now after working in that industry was just like night and day for me. Like I mentioned before, the learning curve in my industry is about 18 to 24 months, which is right around the area that I'm at. But there's still so much to learn. And what's been happening for me lately, which is what I'm very grateful for, and what I pray for, is your girl has been booked and busy, and my project load has been filling up. And lately, if I'm being honest with you, I've been feeling pretty anxious because, as I've continuously said, the learning curve is so steep. And sometimes I question if I'm providing the right solution for my customers, being that we have literally over 200 different product lines, y'all, not even exaggerating, that we have access to represent. So recently, I was working on a large project. And for this portion of the project, my team and I were on the product selection portion. What this consisted of is us locking ourselves away in a room for literally, I feel like almost 2 hours, looking line by line for this project and looking at the items that the designer specified, along with looking what the client sent us for inspirational pictures, right, that they wanted us to match. One thing that I can say is in this moment, the psychological size was starting to get to me for those who are in the room. And the reason being is because, right, I'm the account manager. So I'm the main person of contact on this project. But I was sitting in the room with our leadership team and those with a design background. And my years of experience, barely 2 years, was nothing in comparison to those in the room with me. And this is the largest project that I've ever worked on. So as the conversation started progressing, we started talking about like which vendors had the best outdoor furniture line, looking at this lounge chair and how we can match it with one vendor. Maybe we should look at this vendor who had the best storage solution to fit this item, or who we should go to for conference tables. And I'm just sitting here like, oh my gosh, I feel so out of my lane right now, so out of my element, and I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sit back real quick and I'm just going to become the note taker. I'm just going to let them work it out and I'm just kind of fall back behind the scenes. And honestly, imposter syndrome started hitting me so heavy, y'all. And I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to just chalk this up and take it as a learning experience because I don't really want to start speaking up and say something that sounds silly or like I don't know what I'm doing. So I was like, you know what? Forget it. Let me just be quiet and let them figure it out. As the meeting continued, and as I was sitting there quiet, which is very unlike me, I started to think about a conversation that I just had with one of our vendor partners the day before. They don't even work for our organization, but they're a vendor that we sell their products, right? And they were just being real with me and started really pouring into me because I was just communicating how things have been going and sometimes how I get in my head and like how there's so much to learn and how I'm being stretched and blah, 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 right? All these different things. And they said, "You're a young Black woman that I want to see win. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Think about what made you successful and special in Michigan. Girl, don't forget who you are." And that really hit me. Like, girl, don't forget who you are. And not to have a slight brag, but to really have a slight brag. Sometimes you really gotta hype yourself up. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I'm that girl. And not saying that from like a cocky or conceited standpoint by any means, but sometimes you really have to talk to yourself that way because your mind can really tell you all these different things that you aren't able to do it, or you forget what made you good or successful in the first place. So I was like, you know what? You're right. Girl, remember who you are. You got this. Then I started thinking about me when I thought about all the ways that I had to change with being in this new industry. And not even that I had to change, but just different things that I started doing as I was in an uncomfortable environment, right? Something that was different. I started even selling the way that I would see other people sell, right? Or I would just start doing certain things that I thought that I need to do to start seeing some success. And then I was like, you know what? Boo. What made you successful? When it comes to sales and your experience in that career, you've always been someone who's been highly responsive. You've always been your goofy and bubbly self with your clients. You worked to create a brand with how you showed up to your clients and how you represented yourself. And you always spoke up, right? So why are you playing it safe now just because you're in a situation that's different or that feels uncomfortable? You've already been prepared for where you're at. So don't backtrack and lose out on some of the progress that you've made to get where you are just because you're uncomfortable and just because it's new and different. So that was a lot, but those are some of the thoughts I was having as I was sitting in this meeting. One of the things that I heard at my last job that always stayed with me when I started thinking about how I showed up and how I represented myself when I was in different meetings is someone once told me, whenever you have a seat at the table, find ways to either do one of the following: make a comment, ask a question, or answer a question. Make your presence known and add value to the conversation. So as I was thinking about how I could add value, I say, you know what? I'm not going to keep thinking about all the experience that everybody else has. I'm going to think about what Brittany can contribute to this conversation. So there was a portion of me and y'all where we started to get stumped on some furniture selection ideas. And I was like, you know what? Let me think about my vendor partners that I'm the tightest with. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to their websites and I'm going to look up their product lines and I'm just going to start making suggestions and see what hits. Long story short, I ended up finding several products and making 2 selections for products that we've been searching for a couple weeks. And I was so proud of myself because here I was sitting here thinking that I didn't have anything to add to the conversation when I'd already been prepared for the moment and I did have value to add. I was just allowing myself to think otherwise. The reason being is when you're in an uncomfortable situation, it can be so easy to play scared. It could be so easy to start silencing your voice. It could become so easy to say that I'm not capable of doing this or to start allowing for imposter syndrome to sink in. But what I want to let you know is to stop playing scared. You're either preparing for it or you're already prepared for it. But don't allow what's new to prevent you from even taking a leap and taking a chance with things because of fear. And to take it a little bit deeper, when you can get to the point in your life of being able to flip the switch and say, I know it's been a tough season. I know I'm not where I want to be, but this season is preparing me for the greater that I'm heading into. That's such a huge thing. And not to stay on work too much, but I'm going to stay on it a little bit longer because these are some of the examples that really stood out to me when it comes to overall preparation. I remember at my last company for the staffing organization that I worked at, my director did the most. And one of the things that he would have me do is he would have me send him emails every single week, like clockwork, on certain impacts that I was having, right? The impacts when it came to my leadership and how I was bringing others with me, the impacts I was having when it came to business development and streaming up new business, as well as my overall production of sales that I currently had, right? And I had to do a full on email of how I made progress in all of those areas. And the crazy thing about that is that even though I was pissed having to do that every week, because my director was someone who would like clock it. He really would. Like if I was not on time when it came to sending that email to him, for sure, if I just missed, because sometimes I'll have these times where I'm like, look, I'm going to try not to send them anything because your girl's tired. I got other things to focus on. He would clock that. And honestly, I was kind of annoyed because he was requiring more out of me that he wasn't asking other people to do, which frustrated me because I already had a lot on my plate. And when I thought about why he did that after the fact, it meant way more because throughout the process, I was annoyed. I was pissed. I didn't feel like always doing it. I was uncomfortable because he would give me a lot of follow-up things to do and he would cause me to think a little bit deeper after I would send these emails. But what it caused me to do is when I became a manager, it allowed me to become a better trainer because I knew some of the things that I had to work through. So now I could teach and train somebody else. It caused me to become a better leader because now I was more conscious of the areas that I was showing up as a leader and how I could encourage and push other people, right? Even when it came to my own sales, it really helped me to think about different areas that I had to work through throughout the year and a half that I was sending him these emails and how I could maneuver through different obstacles when it came to my own sales journey, right? And working with different clients. And as I sat back and as I thought about that, I was like, wow, Brittany, you're a great note taker now, along with all those other different examples I just mentioned, because the preparation and what I was doing. So even though it was uncomfortable during that time frame, it was preparing me for things that I didn't even know it would prepare me for in the future. Because the truth of the matter is sometimes you'll have to go through different things and you don't really even understand what it's doing or how it's going to impact you or the why behind it. But sometimes the why is unknown. You just got to keep moving. And that's half the battle. Another example that I personally have is my first job in high school. I worked for a fast food restaurant and I remember closing. And that consisted of making sure that everything was stocked, vacuuming, cleaning the bathrooms, washing the windows. And sometimes I would go above and beyond because I started thinking, if this is something that I'm doing, I want to think about the brand that I'm creating. Even though I didn't want to always do some of the things I had to do, what it was doing for me is it was preparing me in ways I didn't realize. It was helping me to start establishing a brand, right? Anytime that my name is on something, I'm going to do my best to show up a certain way, to have a certain level of quality. And that started to tie into my clients. That started to tie into coaching. That started to tie into other areas in life of how I was representing myself and how I was showing up. Even as a coach, that was another thing that was preparing me because my last year of coaching, I had what's called Motivational Mondays to my cheerleaders. And essentially, before we even started practice, I would bring the girls in and I would think of like something that really resonated with me and I would just pour into them and I would talk to them about the lesson I learned. And as I think about it, that's essentially what I'm doing now in this podcast. That's another thing that was continuously preparing me in ways that I didn't even realize would impact me down the road. And even with this podcast and in my talks with God, I would kind of battle it, which I mentioned previously, because having a podcast and being vulnerable on such a large platform is uncomfortable at times, right? And I will also have these moments where I felt like I wasn't even qualified to have a podcast, if I'm being honest, because there's still so many things that I deal with from my own personal battles, just like everybody else. And I was thinking, like, how can I encourage someone else when I at times still struggle with XYZ? Then that's when I heard, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be relatable. And that's so powerful because as I sat and as I paused, and even as I gave some of those examples that I previously mentioned, I realized that I was already being prepared for a lot of the areas I would begin stepping into. Because the key to preparation can be simple. You got to keep moving. Analogy that I want to leave with you is Houston is huge and the weather be tripping sometimes, y'all. And my fellow Houstonians, y'all know. And I can't tell you how many times it's been pouring raining in one area and the sun shining in the next. This is something actually that happened within this last week. And I was leaving work. It was pouring raining, y'all. And I don't know about you, but I'm that type of person, like, first off, I can't wait to get off work every single day. Not like I don't like my job, but it's something about like getting home in your own place of comfort and peace, being able to kick off your shoes, get you a nice meal, get your little blanket to cuddle with, right? But especially if it's raining, oh baby, I'm having me a good little night. It's gonna be very relaxing. I'm gonna turn the air on. Okay, let me pull it back. But anyway, so those were some of the things that were going in my head when it was pouring raining. I was like, I can't wait to get home, have me a nice meal, and chill. As I was driving home, it started raining even harder, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get out of this. Hands was gripped on the steering wheel. Vision was a little cloudy because the rain was raining so hard. And crazy enough, in less than 5 minutes, as I kept driving, I passed the storm. And I could see the sun shining again. Now, I want you to relate that to your own life. How often are we in what feels like a storm and you're trying to make it through? But what I want to tell you is that the storm may slow you down. It may make it more challenging to reach the next destination. But I want you to stop looking at it as an obstacle and consider the preparation that's taking place for you to maneuver and push past the rain to the light. Because you know what? It's really all in the preparation. And now that I've shared my thoughts, I want to give you a little homework assignment. I want you to think about 2 things that occurred in life that felt frustrating, but actually prepared you. I want you to remember how you felt in the moment. I want you to think about your mindset. I want you to think about some of the things that you had to work through to get to the other side. The reason that I want you to do this is because there's always going to be things that challenge you and stretch you in life. So much of life is not what happens to you, though. It's about how you're able to be resilient through it and get to the other side of that experience. What I really want you to focus on is shifting your mindset to see that there's power in the preparation. All right, y'all. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Radiance Effect Podcast. I pray that this message landed with you in a positive way and encouraged some reflection for you to see how your circumstances can be shaping and preparing you for something greater. Do me a favor, be sure to share this episode with a friend and follow the show on your platform of choice on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. New episodes will air every first and third Monday at 7 p.m. Until next time, bye.